AI, artificial intelligence, seems to be taking over the world in no time. It has gone from being a relatively discussed topic to the topic in every article every day, constantly, or at least a vast majority of them. Whether it's just using AI to ask questions and get answers, whether it's in search engines or you're using some of these AI tools, or NVIDIA's talking about their GPUs and people are buying them because of all the power needed. If AI is that incredible and is growing that fast and is one of the biggest industries that people are talking about and investing in, wouldn't it make sense that cryptocurrencies in A will also do very well? The idea of decentralized models and privacy and transparency, knowing how it's taught so you can trust what it's telling you, that I think is going to be huge. So I'm Brian, big dumb animal, don't do what I do, informational purposes only. That's always my disclaimer. For the last probably 3 or 4 episodes, I've been focusing on AI only crypto. I'm going through various categories of cryptocurrencies, and I'm looking at 2 or 3 of the larger, or the ones that seem to have made the most progress within each of those categories, but also subcategories. So for example, we talked about BitTensor in terms of AI models, training them, developing them, sharing them, that sort of thing. And then we talked about Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, which is what most people call Fetch, as well as Virtual. We compared those. And then in another one, we discussed more of the compute power, and that was with Render and Aether. And today, we're actually going to look at 3 with respect to layer 1s. Layer 1, if you're not familiar, think of it as the foundation or the building block on which you're going to build other things. If, Ethereum, Solana, ADA, Hedera, ICP, whatever it is, those are layer 1s, just like they would be highways. And on each highway, you're going to build different things. For example, in decentralized finance, they're going to have an exchange. They might have a borrow-lend protocol, and each one's going to have their own specific to them. So layer 1s are hugely important, and there's many of them. However, some are specific to certain industries, and we're going to talk about the ones specific to AI. Now, here we are in the AI and big data category. As we scroll down, we looked at BitTensor. We're going to look at Near Protocol. We're going to talk about ICP. We already mentioned some of these. We're going to move down here to Injective. And some of these others, I've taken a look at them, but they really don't fit in terms of layer 1 specific to AI. Let's look at the largest ones. Near Protocol, 2.8 billion fully diluted. ICP, 2.6 billion. And we've got here Injective, 1.1 billion. You'll notice their market cap and fully diluted are essentially the same because all of their tokens are out, or they're completely out and they may be adding some more, but that's why their market cap and their fully diluted match. That's a good thing. We're not worried about large token drops on the market, so we can take that off the table when we compare them. First, let's look at Near Protocol. Interesting background about Near Protocol. I did a video well over a year ago, and I said, this doesn't look like AI to me. You can find that on my playlist. And then I did one around November, and I said, wow, I was wrong. This is very specific to AI, but there was a reason for that. When I made my first video, they weren't even talking about AI on their website. And you can watch it if you're interested, but don't bother. Let me just tell you, here's the short of it. The short of it is, back in 2017, I believe, some individuals wanted to create some AI, models or AI Web3 programming. And as they started to develop, they realized that they needed a better base, a better foundation on which to build, and that the other blockchains really weren't conducive to what they needed to be able to create and develop within the AI space. So they said, which I thought was brilliant, they said, all right, let's put that project on pause and let's work on making a better foundation that's more conducive to these AI, to what we need to develop an AI. So they said in one of the articles I wrote, which I think is kind of funny, they said, we thought we would just put 6 months into it, build the foundation, and then we could get back to developing an AI. Well, it wasn't until 2024, a 7-year period of time. because it's like anything else. Things always take longer than you think. And I'm sure when they started to look under the hood and they started tinkering with things, they just went down a rabbit hole. Well, thank goodness they did, because now we have Near Protocol, what it is today, which is an amazing foundational layer, if you will, for AI on which to build upon in AI. If I were to give you an example, old school, kind of like databases. You may use different types of databases to store data, and you may query them to get information out. And some of them may be really slow and some may be really fast. And you may look at it and say, well, your queries are wrong. And sometimes people's queries were wrong. Other times it was like, your queries are optimized as best possible. It's not the query that's the problem. In other words, it's not what you're trying to develop in AI that's the problem. It's the underlying database. It wasn't created, the architecture wasn't created in such a way that you're going to get the results you need really fast. So in other words, you can build all kinds of cool AI stuff, but it's probably not going to be optimized as best possible if it's built upon a crummy foundation, duct tape and glue, instead of having a great foundational layer. Anyway, I really like Near Protocol because of what I read about how they came out with it. Let me give you some stats on it. So in 2025, they had some very positive developments. AI integration in Near AI Assistant launch, aimed at building the world's largest open source AI model. That's huge, and that's something that I think would compete with like a bit Tensor. Then they had performance upgrades, reducing their blockchains to 600 milliseconds with 1.2 second finality. Here's what matters: 10 times faster than Solana, 600 times faster than Ethereum. Now, you hear about all kinds of blockchains always comparing themselves to one another, but the bottom line is they're making it incredibly fast, which I'm assuming is very important for AI. You've got so much data. User growth and ecosystem. Near has become the second most used layer 1 blockchain with 46 million active users in May of 25, trailing only Solana. That is huge. There's more that they accomplished in 25, but those are all specific to AI. Okay, the next one I was looking at is Injective. Now, we already talked about the size of it. Doesn't really have token launches coming out. But if we look at Injective, even though it's on that AI list, it's more specific to DeFi. Now, it has the ability, I guess, to use AI within DeFi. It has big investors, well-known ones, Pantera Capital. It's got Mark Cuban. But it's not specific as a platform for AI. So I'm not sure why it's really in that AI category. I like Injective. I like what they're doing in the financial space, but it really doesn't pertain to a layer 1 specifically built for AI. But it was the closest one I could find. Now, if we talk about Internet Computer is a very generic layer 1. I love Internet Computer. Hedera is a generic layer 1. I love Hedera, both for different reasons. You can create and scale completely on-chain apps on ICP. That's a big deal. They came out with, and you can, I guess, put in your AI modeling within that, which would provide not just transparency and decentralization, but also security, which is huge for AI. So to me, that's a nice fit, but it wasn't created specifically for AI, but it happens to be an interesting fit. Also, they came out with something called their Caffeine. And the Caffeine AI is to really help people develop applications through speaking them. And then they're hosted within ICP on chain. So the next closest thing I could find, even though I wouldn't consider ICP built specific for AI, it does have a very interesting use case for it and provides things like not just decentralization and transparency, but also security. So of those three, I think you probably already see where I'm leaning. And I'm not going into all the research I did and that sort of thing. I don't want to bore you and waste your time. But when it comes to layer 1s, let's just look at Near and Injective. Here's a near chart, goes back to 23. We got 23, 24, 25 daily. Why? Because it was just petering along back in 23, and then it took off. And it ran up to around $9. It's at $2.50 right now. Here's the buying pressure, the volume. It's pretty much a sideways chop during this whole time, but, you know, as you move data points, and if we were to look at roughly a year's worth of daily data, we can see that it was choppy, it shot up, and yes, it's pretty much just been sideways. So that's not bad. You know, your buying pressure has been essentially sideways, even though the price has been going down. Always use multiple technical indicators. I am greatly simplifying this, but in general, this is showing that it should potentially break to the upside because the buying pressure hasn't broken down. Usually if you see the selling go down, you would see the buying go down. That's not the case here. That's good. There's many other things you can look at. We can look at the volume levels at the different pricing levels. And it looks like the largest one is around here at about $2.50. So it would be nice to see it not only break to the upside, but see the volume break to the upside, and to also see it get through that $2.50, which is currently a resistance, and then test it a couple times as support before it then takes off. It's got another sort of resistance here around $5. But look, 225 to 9 to, oh, is that to 8 almost 9. So it's almost a 4x just to get back to where it was. Table that one for a second. Injective, same time frame here, daily over 2 years, similar pattern, low, shot up over time. Here's the OBV. Now its buying pressure came down, but let's just go apples to apples, a year's worth of data, pretty much just sideways. Big selling pressure here, buying pressure, selling pressure, buying pressure. So here what we're seeing, now this isn't too bad either if we look at its most recent peak and the fact that it's down with where it is now. It's come down slightly, but not much. However, I do think if you're looking at these, I do prefer this chart with this huge run up and not much of a sell-off to this one. It's very close, although it had a bunch of buying pressure here. Actually, not bad. $11.50 at the moment, 32 up here. It's like a 3x. All right. So just looking at recent highs, although it had a high back in 24 of $52, almost a 5x. All right. But let's compare. Near is at 2.8 billion at the moment. Injective's a 1.1 billion. So Injective could double and it would just be at Near's. But I don't believe Injective really fits as a layer 1 only AI. I think most people, when they think a specific layer 1 AI, they're thinking Near protocol, 2.8 billion. When we look at all of the cryptos, this is all of them, and they're fully diluted, their market cap. We scroll down here, we're going to run into Solana, been around for a while, Cardano, been around for a while, Sui, pretty darn new, Chainlink, very different, Avalanche, Stellar. But look, if we go up here to Cardano at 26 billion, and I think that Near is in one of the hottest categories, which is AI. And it's a purposefully built layer 1 for AI. And it's at 2.8 billion. And I'm getting old and my memory stinks. Was 8 at 28 billion? Close, almost 28 billion. So do I think Near at 2.8 billion could be the size of ADA right now? This is June of 2025. We are not yet in that bull run. Bitcoin's just starting to move. If we do go into a bull run, ADA is going to go much higher, I would believe. But Near a 10x, I think that is a no-brainer. And usually, I'm fairly conservative. I'm not saying, oh, it's going to 50x, 1,000x, 2,000x. I'm usually very conservative, like 3, 4, 5, whatever. I think a 10x is no problem, considering what they've accomplished and the architecture that they've created. 28 billion, 56 billion, 100 billion. Wow. Yeah, 100 billion. Do I think it could, what's that, a 40x? 3 billion, 40x? Could, 10 to 40x. This is a very exciting one. And I think this one will shock a lot of people. Okay, I'm going to do another video coming up where I will review and recap everything within AI. Personally, you know that I hold a lot of different crypto, and people say it's too much, but I look at categories I like, and I break them into subcategories, and that's what we've just done with all of the AI. So I'll have a summary video, and then you can make your own decisions from there. Have a great day. Hope it was helpful. Hope we can all make generational wealth together with crypto. Thanks for watching.